Alright, let's do a Harry Potter character tier list. I'm a huge Potterhead, you could say. Love all of the movies. Read one of the books. I liked Fantastic Beasts. Harry Potter himself, A tier. Hermione, S tier. Ron, possibly S tier, but I'll put him high A tier. Harry and Ron, they just kind of could use a little bit more meat on them bones. They often, I mean, they're good that they don't often know what they're doing and they have to dig deep to win the day. And that's nice and everything, but just doesn't make for that interesting and dynamic of characters, which you don't really need because you have other characters to balance them out. You have a ton of characters in this franchise, so they don't need to be anything more than what they are. Ginny, B tier. Ron's brothers, A tier. Low B tier. Low B tier. Ron's mom, probably A tier. Dumbledore, S. Hagrid will probably end up low S. Snape, S. Come on. He's actually like goes from being a Death Eater to not being a Death Eater to acts as a spy. And early on in the series, he's just like a legitimately good villain. Voldemort. I like Voldemort quite a bit. I feel like we could have gotten more of his character. I mean, we kind of understand why he is the way that he is, but he does a lot that we don't understand. Could have used a tiny bit more of him. I'll put him right below Harry. Sirius Black. Very solid. Despite Prisoner of Azkaban probably being the greatest film, and it's showing all the film version of these characters, so I'm going to go mostly just by film. I imagine he's far more interesting in the books. More developed. There's more of a reason to care about everything that happens to him. Not that there isn't a reason in the movies, but there'd just be more of that. I think I gotta put him right below Voldemort. Neville. Right below Sirius in A tier. McGonagall. She gets such cool like character moments. It's gotta be A tier. It's gotta be right below Neville. Oh, this character is such a great villain. Probably the greatest villain of the series. I think I'll also put her... might put her ahead of Neville, below Sirius. Mad Eye. I mean, he's got a mad eye. He's pretty darn cool. But he doesn't really do anything beyond that. I mean, he's cool and he kicks butt, but a lot of these characters are kind of succumb to being there being too many characters. Possibly the second biggest villain of the franchise. I'll put him below Mad Eye. This dude from the Ministry, I believe. I barely remember him. So, low C tier. Wormtail. Definitely underutilized in the films. Despite getting a decent amount of screen time, his character is what it is, right? Like, he's this kind of pathetic, cowardly guy. So the only way to show that is to have him be pathetic and cowardly on screen. So it's like a situation where he gets a lot of screen time, but that has to develop him as what he is. So there isn't going to be much time to do and much else beyond that, right? So I think low B tier is fair. Dobby's just pure awesomeness. I think I got to put him below the Weasley parents. Draco. I think I got to put him below Harry and above Voldemort. I forget Harry's cousin or whatever. Why do I forget his name? I shouldn't forget his name. I haven't watched these or read any of the books in so long. Dursley? Is it Dursley or something obnoxious? I'll put him just above his dad because he is incredibly over the top. We got Professor Chair. He's probably just above Mad Eye. Luna's just coolness. So much like mystery and weirdness. Cedric just doesn't get the development. We know very, very little about him. Ooh. Let's just place her where she belongs. Fiend or whatever his name is, that other house elf. This guy, I think he's another Ministry guy if I remember correctly. Put him low B tier. Filch. His awesomeness alone puts him just below Dobby. I was gonna say just below the Weasley parents, but he's below Dobby as well. Let's be serious. Victor Crumb, just super underdeveloped, bland. Makes him come across as bland, which is unfortunate. I feel like Goblet of Fire could have been 2 movies. Like, think about all of the characters it introduces and all the concepts it introduces. And that would have allowed for a larger development of the next movie, Order of the Phoenix, which has the best villain. So I think you could have kind of bridged that gap a little bit. I know that would be weird, and like people like, you wouldn't necessarily need to do that, but you could do that. And I think it would have added more. Like, does anybody out there really wish that there wasn't another movie like squeezed in there? Come on. But Victor Crumb just isn't around enough to really matter at all. Put her atop of C tier. She's cool, but kind of unneeded in terms of the films. Professor that gets to do a lot more. and gets to be more dynamic. I think I've got to place him just below Filch. We got Claire, I believe her name is. Again, underdeveloped. I'll put her above Victor Crumb, maybe below. Victor Crumb does a tiny bit more. He has a little bit more of a presence. He's not just like eye candy. Lucius. Papa Malfoy himself. Kind of weird, like definitely great casting and directing. They make this guy so like he just has this creepy intensity that's really awesome. I just wish it would have paid off a little more. I think I'll put him below the Weasley parents. Slightly above Dobby. I feel like they're one and the same, right? Whereas Dobby has that lovable joyfulness to him. Lucius Malfoy has that like evil creepiness about him, and they both come across on screen so well and like elevate scenes that they're in. We got Crabbe and Goyle. Kind of unfortunate that they only ever get to be like the stupid goons of Malfoy. I think I gotta put them in D tier. I mean, they have like one or two funny moments, but it's not like high comedy. It's not enough. It's nothing to really matter in any kind of way. Like, you have so much whimsy and other stuff in Harry Potter that you kind of don't need that comic relief. I'm not saying they shouldn't be there and they don't have their place. It just isn't that. It's just one of the lackluster aspects is them, and tons of these other characters could fill that spot of having a bit of comic relief. Like, the setting and the characters lend themselves to it. Like Fred and George occupy. Fred and George can do anything Crabbe and Goyle can do, and they can do it better. Bellatrix. I think it's fair to put Bellatrix. Again, more development would have her clearly in S tier. But because as fun as she is on screen, I think putting her with Gary Oldman here is very fair. And she gets to do more and be more fun than Gary Oldman ever gets to be. So I'll put her right below Voldemort. Put her with Mad Eye. Cho Chen. People really hype up Cho Chen. I don't get it. She's bland. She's real bland. She just doesn't get to do anything. There's no reason to have her do more than what she does. If anything, you ultimately want like less of her on screen. No offense to the character. It's just there's just so many other characters. I'm sorry. Dean. Ultimately a background character, but accomplishes a lot for like a tertiary character, classmate. He's no Neville. He's no Ginny. But he does well. Put him right below Mad Eye. We have the guy who teaches Harry Potter Quidditch. Don't remember his name. I mean, the scene is very memorable. I think I gotta put him a middle C tier. At least he gets like lines and stuff. I'll put him below the Goblet of Fire exchange students. I know they're not exchange students, but where are you going to put him? James Potter. There's just not enough James Potter for. I just don't care about Harry's parents. I'm just going to be totally honest about that. I just do not care about his parents. I think D tier. I mean, the whole story revolves around them not being there, so there isn't a reason to care. You're supposed to not care about his parents. And anytime most of you ever see of James Potter is he's being kind of a douche in the school to his classmates, the Snape. I'll place her maybe top of C tier. Their other classmate. He does a little bit less than Dean. I'll just place them together. This is the Victor Crumb. Victor Crumb's teacher or whatever, I do believe. He's got a sweet beard. But he basically does nothing. Low C. The nurse. I think she might only be there in the first one or the second one. I don't remember her besides like when Dumbledore goes to talk to Harry. Bottom of C. A lot of these people just are below the tertiary characters. The girl that Ron dates briefly, she was really cool. Like, she was such a menace to Ron. It's very entertaining to watch him just have to navigate dating her. They did a good job with it. I mean, at that point in the series, it's hard to really get like a solid B plot going. And they do a good job of it, which is impressive. That's really the strength of Harry Potter, is the B plots. Not all of them are great, obviously, but there's so many strong ones. I think I'd put her just above Filch. We got Gringotts, Buddy, the banker. I'll put him above this other elf. The professor. I mean, he's got the coolness, the swag. Safe to put him bottom of B. I mean, come on. Warwick Davis. This girl may as well be one of the exchange students. Put her lower than them. And the Quidditch guy. I almost don't remember her at all. Don't remember who this girl is at all. F tier, whoever you are. I think this is Harry's mom. I could be wrong. This redhead girl. Who is she? I think she's Harry's mom. I might be completely wrong about that. Bottom of C tier she goes. Professor Quirrell. I mean, he's okay. There's too much other character development that goes on for him to get his moment to shine. And there's no problem with that. It's just he's ultimately a bit lame. Moaning Myrtle. Bottom of B tier. Actually, that might be harsh. She's basically a classmate. I'll put her up here with Dean. I love Ender. Just as the way he talks, the scenes that he gets, push him way up here. He's no Filch though, but he almost is. Let's find a spot for this classmate. Right there. The announcer for Quidditch. We needed more of you. We needed a reason to care about you. You were cool. You announced things. You had cool hair. Put you above the other Quidditch guy. I'll just skip some of these. Some of these just do not matter. I mean, he's almost Sirius Black, but he's not quite. A tier right next to Sirius. You know him, you love him. Yeah, most of these remaining ones are pretty irrelevant. We'll go with Draco's mom. Draco's mom, we get little to nothing. No reason to care anything about her character. Just total background. I think I gotta put her lower than the classmates. Maybe even lower than these elves. So we'll talk about S tier because that's the most important. We'll basically talk about anybody from Voldemort and above. Voldemort. We get a lot of backstory and development, but we could have used more of him being him. And by him being him, I mean him not being him. All the stuff we don't see in the movie. Him being more of a person, because he was a person, right? Like, I get it, he hasn't really been a person for a long time, but he feels like more like a monster. I feel like they really take away too much of his humanity. Like, he needs at least a couple human moments, especially when he is like talking to Harry and trying to convince Harry. Like, there's, it's never gonna work. I mean, obviously there's watching a movie and it's not going to work. This is like children's entertainment. So of course it's not going to work on Harry, but part of you wants to believe that maybe there is a tiny chance, right? And they don't give you that because there's nothing humanizing about him. There's no reason for Harry or any of the rest to see him as a human. There's no reason for the audience to see him as a human. We never see him interact in any kind of human way besides flashbacks when he's talking to Dumbledore. And even then, he's not all that human. He's kind of just this like dark child who's not really taking in anything that Dumbledore is saying. And that's a major issue, right? Like, I kind of wish he had a little bit more humanity when he was a child, when he was an adult. We just needed it. Any of that would have easily elevated him to S tier. There's nothing to connect to with this character. Malfoy kind of has a similar problem, but at least we see Malfoy like have fun and try to be normal at certain points. Like, he engages with other students. He does student activities. Like, he has some life to him. And then once he kind of gets his redemption, that's when we get the most of it. Harry he just isn't quite it. There's just way too stacked of characters. There's way too many characters for him to be the best. Ron has more flaws, has more growing to do. We see him change a lot more. In a lot of ways, Harry's like the same. Harry's kind of confined to this like prophecy, and it shapes a lot of like who he becomes. And he has people like Dumbledore and Hagrid and Snape looking over him and kind of making sure that this prophecy becomes fulfilled. And it kind of eliminates his choice, and like they actively eliminate his struggles, whereas Harry more feels like he's just along for the ride and overwhelmed at all times, which is just more interesting and more relatable than just being some like, oh, I'm just the strongest wizard ever because I'm the strongest wizard ever. Luna just has all the mystery, all the likability. Just if you were to like for some reason give them like character stats, she would have the top. She would top out over so many other characters in a lot of stats. Just too cool for school, genuinely. Very deserving of S tier. Snape, he just gets to do so much. He goes from being a bad guy to being a good guy, to acting as a bad guy, to doing bad things for the bad guys, to doing good things. He's just all over the place. Really cool. Really well executed. Snape is probably a lot of people's favorite. That's why when the final books were coming out, all the talk was about what happens to Snape. All of it. Hagrid's pretty awesome. He really kind of like falls away in certain spots. Like he's kind of just he shows up here or there, which sounds ridiculous because he's in like his hut, and it's more like they show up here or there to Hagrid, but Hagrid helping them out, having this cool like being this cool like groundskeeper, and he's basically like in control of the Forbidden Forest. He has all kinds of knowledge. He's kind of a parallel in a lot of ways to Dumbledore. Dumbledore just gets a lot more of those sweet moments. And Hermione, of course. How do you not have Hermione at the top? I mean, she has to actually solve all these problems. Has to actually kind of carry the group a lot of the times. They could have dealt a little deeper. Granted, it would have felt like it wasted screen time, but again, like I was saying, we needed Goblet of Fire to be 2 movies. Then you could have really fleshed out Hermione's character as she goes to the ball with Victor. Like that whole arc of the story could have been way bigger than what it was, and would have given us a lot better sense of these main characters, and Hermione especially. So you kind of have to fill in the blanks with Hermione, and maybe that's kind of the purpose of the three main protagonists, is that they're kind of like self inserts for everybody, and I'm sure a lot of people feel that way about Hermione, and that's kind of the whole point of her. And yeah, top of S. I didn't really think that that's where she would place when I started making this list, but I really think that's how I feel. I guess I'm a bigger Hermione fan than I ever realized. Let me know who you think is at the top and why. Leave a comment. I love talking about Harry Potter, any kind of film franchise, any kind of show or whatever. I could talk about this stuff for hours. Let me know what you think. I'm very interested to know. Let me know if you have any lists, if you make YouTube videos. I'd love to watch them. Link them in the comments. I'll check it out.